Games you deserve.
I'm Erik, and this week on Games You Deserve, we talk about coronavirus and how it's affecting the games industry. Plus,
I'm Smitty, and we'll be taking a deep dive into our video game roots. Plus,
I'm Dan. Join us as we take a trip to Miami with the Game of the Week.
been in the video game business for a couple decades, and my first publisher was pretty well known back in the mid 90s, and we were making games for Mac and porting them to PC, and this was well before consoles were really even a thing. I'm not talking about Atari 5200s or anything. We're talking about like Sega Dreamcast, and that was coming out during, I don't know, probably the beginning of my career in the video game business. So I think we'll be able to talk some old man reference, some current, gaming, things that, I don't know, unless we're all over 20 here.
Oh, let's not give that away this early. Let's not give that away.
There's not going to be any Generation Z talk here, but
I've got kids, so I can speak to my kids' experience with video games as well, and
sure.
It certainly has evolved over the last 40 years or so.
Well, to be fair, I think all of us do, and I think we've all got that type of experience, which is really great. Before we move too far forward, I just want to say that I've heard of video games. I know what they are.
That's good.
No, I've pretty much put hands on nearly every single video game system that's ever existed as a big collector. One point in my collecting history, I had over 40 different systems in hand.
Wow.
Not at the same time. I wasn't like holding them all at once, but they were all in my house at the same time.
And so, we'll get into the collecting thing in a different episode, I think, but what was these are all games you played, or was it just you had it to display, or how did that work?
I had it all for all the reasons.
Okay.
I love to play them, hook them up, check them out, try different games on them. I definitely have my favorites and some not so favorites. I couldn't even tell you how many actual games over the time that I've owned. At one point, and this sounds like something we should also explore at some point, and I'm sure we will. I liquidated and went into a whole different realm of gaming, and I built myself an arcade cabinet that I designed. And I think that there's a ton of people with arcade love too,
yes,
that we should definitely talk about at some point. And I think that comes in, in so many people's histories with the arcade. But really the point of me saying all of that was to show that I have this deep, deep, deep love for video games. And I feel like when I look over the room that I've probably passed that on to somebody else here. I've got a little one who's sitting on a couch right now. I think he's playing Sonic Mania on his Switch, which is great. So yeah, like this is something that means a lot to me. The digital preservation aspect, the gaming aspect, pretty much all aspects of it. So much so that I started doing things like this, like creating podcasts, and I run a number of communities surrounding this, really trying to bring everyone closer together and bring the industry and fans closer together, which is actually how Smitty and I met. And I'm sure he deeply regrets that.
It's a virtual relationship. It's
well, we got to maintain social distance.
It's an internet.
We're doing nice segue. Speaking of which,
yeah.
It's something we're going to get into, probably a news segment most episodes, when we start the episode by talking about something that's happening in the world. And there's only really one thing happening in the world today, and that is the COVID-19 outbreak or pandemic or whatever you want to call it. We're all stuck at home right now, basically podcasting from home, but also working from home, I think. Are you guys working from home?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I literally today was my last, as I'm recording this, today is my last day having to go into the office for a while. Starting tomorrow, I will be working from home. And yeah, what a crazy scenario.
It's really unprecedented. I've never experienced anything like this, as I believe nobody has, really.
No.
Well, I have to tell you that I am hating this sequel. The COVID-19 is the worst sequel ever. I think the whole franchise jumped the shark after COVID-3.
Absolutely.
I do think one of the worst parts about this, though, is that there are these events that are being canceled.
my gosh.
Things like, I mean, I'll just put it on the table. The biggest one is obviously E3. That has such an impact every year on the fan side. I mean, we know what E3. You and I have been at similar events here. We've been to the same E3, for a long time ago, and we know that that's changed over time. But from a fan standpoint, everybody knows every year when that's going to happen. And then GDC.
Well, if I was going to say, from an industry standpoint, GDC is much more of a business show. And of course, there are multiple GDCs, but the GDC in San Francisco is always, that's the OG one, and that's the one when it gets canceled. And much less, a bunch of our friends got, hung on the hook with airline flights and hotels they couldn't cancel because GDC was not canceled. It was postponed.
And it was last moment, too.
Yeah.
I mean, this wasn't something that anybody saw coming. At least E3 had some time in front of it. And that doesn't happen until June.
And then, bro, I'm in Texas, and I got to mention the good old South by Southwest. And,
got an axe to that.
That is... God. And that was canceled by the municipality, of the city of Austin canceled that. And so then you've got the promoters, the poor promoters there that are then forced to look at their own cancellation policy. And they have to look at everybody that bought badges. Some of them are $1,000, $1,500 badges, and say, sorry, man, no refunds, because you can clearly see on our refund policy, it states no refunds. And they didn't cancel the event. The city canceled the event. So it's, quote, act of God almost, But let's bring it back to games, right? So what did we have? Didn't we have, what did they say, 20 million concurrent Steam connections on, how many concurrent Steam connections?
We're seeing some record numbers across the board. It's not just something like Steam. I mean, GOG is having all kinds of users just jumping on. Nintendo had an outage with their online service.
We had a problem with Discord because...
a massive outage.
Just a massive outage with Discord just a couple days ago. And
everybody's home. They want to play. They want to do stuff online because they can't go outside. They can't be with their friends. So they're going to jump on and play games, right?
And communicate. I mean, that's
right.
the other thing. That's one thing that people are failing to understand. Like, let's say I have uncles or somebody that don't understand the video game. They're like, these kids all sitting in their mama's basement playing games. They're like, well, but I bet you they're connected to about 100 people through those headphones over that course of that night, that they may never actually know their name or whatever, but they're not alone sometimes. Sometimes
they're sharing
yes.
a story.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But it really is. It's a theater of the mind, in a lot of ways. The way that we communicate now through like Discord, because even how we're sitting here talking, we can't see each other. We certainly sound like we're in the same room with each other, though, and it's very strange.
I just wish you would put some pants on. That's
my camera.
Can you hear that? You can hear that he doesn't have pants on?
Yeah. I'm not even going to start. Because I think... I went to Overland Trail Arcade in Enid, Oklahoma, which was conveniently located right across the street from Putt Putt. And did anyone have a putt-putt? Those little outdoor putting greens, things. And that putt-putt also had a mic, a little arcade inside of it, and a robot that delivered pizza.
Oh, I had one of those.
But the robot was controlled by a dude.
I love that thing. Yeah, it's the guy with the remote control in the back in the kitchen.
Totally right.
I wish I had one of those. We never had one of those.
Yeah,
well,
cool.
You got to have some rich oil people in your town.
Probably. We weren't special enough for robotic pizza delivery.
Yeah, but the video games at home once Atari came in, I had a 2600, I had a 5200, and of course, the trackball for the 5200 was just like revolutionary because I wanted to play Centipede, and then I could actually have the same experience that I could at the arcade, and I could also practice at home the same, kind of on the same equipment, if you will. That's what she said, that I had at the arcade. And so then I think there was some evolutions where I started seeing not competitive gaming, but when we went to the arcades, man, dude, that was the original competitive gaming. You put your quarters up there and you got to play until you lost, and then when you lost, you didn't get to play again. And then it was all about the high scores, your 3-digit name, the high score, and 3-digit, whatever initials for the high score. And so I was JTS. If anyone saw me out there on Galaga, out there in Enid. But so anyway, I think that the way that I look at things when I look at the current state of gaming is I love where it's at. I think the evolution of what gaming is, it has stayed true to its original origins more than any other entertainment platform, period. Music, poetry, movies, stage. It's even magicians. You can't just have a simple magician. You have to, make a building disappear or you suck. But it's, so I just love the way that gaming has kind of stayed true to community and rewarding excellence, in a lot of ways. And also, just one of the greatest gatherings of artists and smart people I've ever seen in my life, to actually make these games. I mean, I always consider myself just crazy lucky, to be really one of those kids that sat and played Joust until, I broke the buttons on my, Atari 5200 controller because those buttons sucked. But
I was gonna say, no, let's not blame you playing it because those controllers are
those
terrible.
Tiny red buttons on the side that suck.
The 5200 was not the best Atari ever did.
Well, no, it wasn't, but it looked cool.
It looked cool. That thing was a honker, dude. That thing was way bigger than the 7800, the 2600. That thing was giant.
Yeah, and then, but it was just a. So game was always the gaming was an escape for all of us, and it was
no doubt
certainly would allow you to be what you wanted to be if you spend enough time with the game. Like that, gaming is kind of one of those things that you can go out there and throw that football 100 times and never be able to throw it 100 yards, or well, of course you're not going to throw it 100 yards, but throw it 50 yards.
Load up a game,
and you can over and over and over, muscle memory, whatever. So there's like, it's not like, oh, kids who can't play sports. I'm not trying to make that parallel, but it's just one of those few things where it's kind of brain exercise, in a lot of ways. There's
all right. So that brings to mind, because you said brain and you said exercise. So I'm going to make you exercise yours.
Okay. What
is the first memory of a video game that you have?
Crying a lot. Oh,
no, not after playing it.
Well, hey,
Which
I
game?
will tell you the truth. It was my dad brought home Pong when it was just a big, weird, round controller thing, and it plugged right into your TV.
And you had to tune to channel 3.
That's correct. Yeah, you had to tune to a different. I didn't know it was channel. You had to tune because I wasn't allowed to touch the TV. But you had to tune to a specific channel or do something. And then I remember that. But and then it had that a Y connect or a Y splitter or whatever, and then there were 2 paddles, if you will. And I just remember my dad brought that home and he said this was amazing. And then he was no good at it, and then he said it was shit. And he told me not to play with it because it was shit. So that was my first gaming memory.
Now, was this the one that had a bunch of different versions of Pong where you could play with different numbers of paddles?
No, man, this was black and white.
Just basic one line on each side and one ball going between them.
Yeah,
that was
that's
it.
right.
That's all you needed, though.
Well, I know, but I remember later on there were different versions of it.
Nolan Bushnell's Pong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. I have a similar memory to that where my dad did a similar thing. He brought it home and we had it for a couple of days. I think he must have borrowed it from a friend or something. But just the idea of being able to control something on the screen, that was just such a cool idea to me. Like just having that interaction with my TV, which is something you never were able to interact with, right? It was always just a passive watching stuff on TV. This way you could actually make things move on the screen.
Oh yeah, unbelievable. And then when I had the Nintendo, the NES, Duck Hunt, that Duck Hunt game, that gun, that light gun was, of course, it was the only stupid game that really played well with it. But it was, they had like a balloon pop game and whatever. But that was also, I remember my mother specifically being mystified by how that actually worked.
The light gun, yeah.
It's so cool.
What about you, Erik? What was your favorite first game?
Oh, man. So when I think about this, I think about two different things. I think about my first game console, and I'll get to that for a second. But honestly, the thing that I remember were these, not even the good ones, the dumb little handheld electronic games that came out before things like
the football game, like the little green football game.
Yeah. And to me, that's kind of like, that's the first video game experience that I had, because parents could be like, here, kid, I threw some AA batteries in here, go play, and so you take that, you go off on your own, and little do you know that although you're having the time of your life with this thing, they're just getting you out of their hair.
I just want to say your mom had a really deep voice. Jeez Louise, that's how she talked.
Heavy smoker.
Yeah, she was like, go play this game so I can smoke.
Go over there, kid.
But
sound like somebody from Jersey. But yeah,
look at you. You're trying to one up all of us here with your coolness. You said video games, and now
that is a video game, though. I mean, it had a screen, it had controls. You got to do that. But really, if we want to talk about like what everybody traditionally thinks of as a video game, the first experience I had, I was on a family trip, and we went to visit other family. I grew up in Southern California, and just because you worked in Dallas, I had to talk about Southern California.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. So I grew up in Southern California, but we had family that lived across up into the northern Midwest in Wisconsin and Michigan. And so we were at to me, an uncle and cousin's house that they had just bought this system that had been out for a little while, rivaled the 2600, the Magnavox Odyssey 2.
Yep. Magnavox.
Not as good as the 2600, but still amazing, and to me, because that was the first one. And then when everybody loved it, because like you see these ads from way back in the day where the entire family's huddled around a TV with somebody at the controls.
Odyssey, video game fun, computer keyboard challenge, the entrance to an alternate world of fire-breathing dragons, hard-hitting sluggers, arcade wizards, outer space wizards. More than 40 games in all. Odyssey, the excitement of a game, the mind of a computer. All for the price of an ordinary video game. Odyssey.
That's what it was like. We were staring all at whoever was playing the game while they're sitting in front of this, 20-inch television. That's
a 20-inch CRT that was inside of a 1,500-pound wooden box.
That's right. Absolutely.
That was a Magnavox, baby.
Or Zenith. It was. and we're just huddled around this thing in awe of this 4-color game that, doesn't look anywhere as cool as the arcades, but guess what? You have it at home. And you think that the 5200 had some limitations? The Odyssey 2 was definitely tough.
We had friends that we would get mad at, and we ended up having like little clubs, if you will, that people who like to play ColecoVision, and in television. In television, and so I just remember, and I mean, it's fun. This is our podcast, right? We can talk about it. A guy named Greg that we grew up with, he had in television, and I remember Richard and some of us, we did not agree with that because we were Coleco guys.
The fact that he had one?
We didn't think that number one, we didn't want to go to his house because we didn't want to play stupid in television because those things sucked. And if you want to have fun, you come over here and play Coleco. There's a Mario game. We have Mario.
Didn't the Intellivision games work with the Atari anyway? I seem to remember having a couple of Intellivision cartridges.
Yes, there was some cross compatibility there.
Yeah. I don't think we were smart enough. We didn't care. But the important part was Greg lived next to Jenny, who was my girlfriend in 4th grade. And so it made it really rough for me. I, I had to stay in my neighborhood.
It feels like you're still holding on to a little something there.
I am, but I still talk to these people on Facebook. If anyone listens to this, they're gonna really enjoy it. But
yeah, I remember the whole club thing. Would you, when we were talking about like your first video game or your first memory, though, is ColecoVision your main system growing up?
no, Nintendo. No,
graduate?
Yeah, Nintendo. No, I was Atari. I'm older. I'm an old dude. So Atari 2600 and Atari 5200, and then NES. And so it was just the straight Nintendo, baby, because we were playing Tecmo Bowl like crazy in high school. And that's what we did. And I played football, and we would, my quarterback and all of us, we would go home. My senior year, we were on work. I call it work release. It's not like we were in jail or something. It's called DECA and VICA. It's like if you had a job and everything, you completed all your credits, you only had to go to school half a day your senior year. And after football season was over, geez, we had nothing to do in the afternoons if we weren't working. So we just all go to Jimmy's house, play Tecmo Bowl, and eat chicken strips. It was like the greatest thing in the whole world.
Sounds good to me.
Oh my God. And there'd be like 8 of us all piled into Jimmy's bedroom, all laying on top of each other and on the bed and on the floor and just waiting to get our turn so we could.
Which color team?
It was
what
always
was the color you went with?
Frick. It was always Raiders. We were always playing, we were playing teams. We weren't playing colors.
I know, but they didn't really have the names of the NFL teams in there. So.
Yeah. Well, they had players,
They had that, yeah.
So I was the Raiders, like it would always want to be that. But Ricky Williams and those kinds of people you would always want to get. But yeah, so
it was sort of locked in time too, right? Like you did have that, but it was kind of locked in time, so it didn't evolve, right? This was the year it came out. This is the teams that were in it. This are the players.
Yeah, there was no update. Yeah, there was, and plus, Jimmy's mom wouldn't buy him the next version anyway. We didn't care because we had all mastered that first, whatever.
Tecmo Super Bowl, though.
Yeah, Tecmo Super Bowl. But so those were just, games have always been not, they've been an escape for me. Because I grew up in a small town, but it was during a time that a fantastical creation, when HBO, I still talk about it. HBO was just starting. It didn't come on until 4:00 in the afternoon. It went off at midnight. That's when they played the national anthem, and then you saw bars and static, at midnight on the channels. There was literally no entertainment after a certain time. And so it was a great way to escape. But the community around it, I guess it did start in the arcade, and the way that games themselves were marketed and introduced to the general public in North America, at least. I know video games were introduced in Asia, completely different, and still to this day, an arcade in Japan is not what we think of when we say arcade here in America.
Sometimes it's better.
Yeah, and you can win money
or
something over there.
Yeah.
It's like pay to win, kind of mentalities in some of the APAC region, some of the games. The Western philosophy of what a video game is different than it is in APAC. If you had
or at least it used to be. I think things have merged quite a bit over time.
Sure.
I think the world's gotten so much smaller, but yeah, absolutely. Back in the day, when I think back, I got to share this memory because it comes to mind so strikingly. When I think of arcade games, I was thinking about track and field. Remember track and field?
Amen.
No joystick.
Well,
no joystick.
No,
just the 3 buttons.
But remember the rule with track and field? Do you remember the rule? You can't bring a pencil.
Can't use a pencil. That's exactly what I was going to say. Because everybody used to know this trick where you would break a pencil to a certain length, stick it in between your fingers so that it had pressure down, and then you just slam your hand on the other one. Yeah, and you could make that dude fly.
Yeah, because it was all about back and forth, to get that dude to run fast enough. But yeah,
that was
no pencils.
That was the game. And if you got good at that game, man, you could just own other people.
Well, yeah, and you were a stud. You might as well been, the guy running on the track.
Damn right.
All of a sudden, people would stand that game, and then Dragon's Lair. When Dragon's Lair came out, you would have 20 people standing around watching you play that game. Remember, they had a TV on top
so that everyone else could
everyone
see.
could watch you playing it.
It was a laser disc. I mean, this was
It was
the
so
future.
so expensive to play. I probably spent $20 a month just playing Dragon's Lair, and that was, back when $20 was $20.
And let's face it, we all sucked at that game.
Well, how
That
could you
game
not?
was
You had
hard.
You couldn't actually play the game. You just had to memorize right, left, up, right.
Oh, yeah.
You just had to memorize.
You couldn't look at the little flash or figure out what it was going to be.
No.
Yeah, that was way too hard to do.
That
game was tough.
My mom bought me a book because she saw how much they had those secret moves and stuff. I'd buy it. But yeah, no, there were some great games, man. But the community, that's the one thing. Like movies, you go to a movie. Shh, don't talk. I mean, you can talk about the movie afterward, but it's like you're not get to enjoy it the same way unless, I guess, you go to I don't know what is that Rocky Horror Picture Show, or something like that, where
Right, where people,
those are like
there's predetermined responses that people will
Right. That's not the same, though. You go to an arcade back in the day, it was loud. Like during the heyday, it was an event. There was people all over the place, people crowding around machines. People were talking,
cigarettes,
eating stuff, smoking,
smoking,
drinking, whatever it was. It didn't matter. Everybody was there to enjoy themselves and play these just incredible.
But hold on, what was the
pieces of art.
loudest thing in the arcade and still is? Oh yeah, the freaking air hockey table.
Oh, the click clacks. Oh my god. Wait a minute. I gotta throw in. There was one small period where Daytona USA was the loudest thing inside of an arcade. It would scream that Daytona. You could hear it from the other side of the arcade. So
yeah, I just loved arcades. But here was the other side of the arcade, that Overland Trail arcade. That's where the high school kids hung out. That's where they smoked cigarettes and whatever. Well, so as I was junior high, none of our parents would take us to the arcade, man. That's where the bad kids hung out. And so that we could go to the mall, and they had a little movie theater. And all of us would lie to our parents and say that we were going to go see double features and hang out in the food court with our, kid, with our friends. And then immediately they drop us off and we zoom right through the mall behind the church over to Overland Trail. And then we'd hang out. I, could never figure out why my mom knew I'd been there. Because I didn't realize that cigarette smoke stuck to you like glue, and stuff. All our parents were like, "Where'd you go to the arcade again?" No. Okay.
No, we're studying.
I'm going to give you one chance here before we go out and pick a switch. And okay, yes.
And why do you keep asking for quarters?
Yeah. Why did you take $20 of quarters out of it? But yeah. So there was an element of kind of being on the edge a little bit as well. So when you're over at the arcade there was a little bit of danger. People got in fist fights at the arcade.
No doubt.
And I was always around older kids because we were sneaking in there, when we were 13, 14 years old. And, so yeah, so there was always this little danger element of games that I always appreciated. And I think a lot of us carried that into our adult life with
no doubt,
the way that we like and honor these games. Like Todd McFarlane, and everything, how all of us got so into his figurines, and he did so many great game related figurines, and then he did Spawn, and like he did stuff in later date, but all his movie stuff, we collected it all because his art for some reason represented that cool, evil. It was like a memory, from that one time period. It seemed we all coalesced around this one form of art that he brought out. And
he was super popular during the early and mid 90s, right? He kind of busts out onto the scene with Spawn. You mentioned it yourself, and that alone sort of represents this entire time frame from way back then through when that comes out, right? It's got the attitude, the look, the feel, and that is what enables him to create all those figurines that then come out. I would be a little remiss if we're talking about like favorite systems or main systems growing up if I didn't just slide in the Super Nintendo, because as much as I love the NES, the Super NES is my favorite retro system, period, flat out, end of discussion. There is nothing, and I know that the Genesis folks are going, oh, what an idiot, what does he know?
Yeah, I'm a Genesis folk.
I
I'm
know.
going, oh, what an idiot.
I
No,
know.
I liked it. I had a Genesis, though. I did not have a Super Nintendo. I was not lucky enough to have a Super Nintendo. I had to be jealous of all my friends who had them while I played my poor Genesis.
This is a story I'm going to reserve for later, but let's just say that I had a buddy that was on that side of the fence, and you know, we found a way to make that work. We figured out how to get that to happen. But the Super Nintendo for me, it was the first time I had ever really seen a gaming system evolve, right? I mean, yeah, Atari had the 5200 and the 7800, but let's face it, the 5200 wasn't great. It's got some nostalgia to it, but it wasn't great. It didn't really amp things up to the next level. The 7800 did better, but the 7800 was still kind of just an NES. You know, it was about that level of capability and the way that it looked and what it did. Plus, Atari never did anything with controllers the way that Nintendo did. Nintendo just revolutionized controllers left and right for the longest time.
That's true. Atari's controllers were always shit.
Yeah, and they broke all the time. You remember the top of the joystick? You would hold the joystick, and then if you played long enough, that fucking thing would pop right off.
Yeah.
Like the plastic would slide off the stick,
and the rubber
What the heck
base to
happened?
it and everything.
Yeah.
But the only thing was the ergonomics of it were not ergonomic at all. It was like
they're
anti-ergonomic.
Yeah, they didn't feel good.
They're trying to duplicate the joystick of an arcade game, but you can't do that because you had nothing to anchor it to. You had to hold the thing and then use your other hand to move the stick, and it never worked.
And of course, when you're playing, you're not concentrating on how hard you're slamming the joystick, on there. So you're treating that thing, with all kinds of force.
Well, Dan, what do you think about the Genesis controllers then? Like, what did you think about those?
They didn't have enough buttons.
No, that's why they came out with a 6-button eventually.
Exactly. Yeah, no, they were a little short-sighted in that.
The control pad, though, on those is amazing.
Yeah. No, once it came out with the 6-button controllers, it was a lot better. But to compare the Genesis controller to the Super Nintendo controller, there's no comparison.
No,
that
overall,
Super Nintendo
the Super
controller
Nintendo
was amazing.
It's a classic. I mean, why do you think the PlayStation controller is what it is today? I mean,
it's basically the model for all other controllers that came after it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
they took what
except
did.
Except for the 64 controller. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that.
Well, it had a mutation and grew an extra leg.
That's right.
I don't know what was going on there. Nobody talks about that in positive light whatsoever, because the 64 it was the controller. It wasn't just that it had a third leg and you didn't know how to hold it right. The quality of the controller was terrible. The little joystick top on the thumbstick would break. Everybody hated it, but overall, Nintendo was so good at figuring out how to innovate controllers. I mean, they're the ones that brought the Wiimote to everyone, which PlayStation, Sony immediately copies, right, and puts motion in their controller. You name it, Nintendo has done controller stuff pretty much first before everyone else did it.
And I would say that plays through to the Switch and what they're doing now. That's totally innovative.
Yeah,
it is based somewhat on the Wii stuff, but still, like they've made it.
Well, it's iterative,
new all over again.
Yeah, it's iterative, and that's been
Iterative.
some of their forte. Iterative. I had to use a big word this time. I promise that'll be the largest word I use today.
That's your password, probably. I bet.
How did you know?
Iterative 1, 2, 3.
Damn, I'm gonna have to change that as soon as we're done recording. The Super Nintendo had some amazing games, but they started off with like one of the best games of all time, Super Mario World.
Yeah.
I mean, right out of the gate, first amazing game that everybody buys with their system. In fact, you probably bought the system that came with that. And what do? How do you follow that up? Oh,
it was just such great sound. The sound I remember being so much better than the Nintendo sound.
Oh,
I just remember
absolutely.
that stereo sound, and the music was amazing. Every aspect of that game was so much better than the previous
The
Mario.
colors
Which was Super Mario. 2?
3.
That came out after.
It came out
3?
after 3, and 3
Okay.
was the most insanely good NES game there is. I mean, they pushed
Yeah.
the NES to the absolute brink on that game, and it was amazing. And then Super Mario World comes out, and you kind of go, I didn't even know this was possible. How is this even possible? So
I'll tell you how
to
it's
me,
possible.
SNES.
You build a team of magic men. Yeah,
They definitely
it
did
was-
that.
Yeah, there's been the way they've held the brand identity of Mario all the way through as well has been kind of interesting. You know how they.
I think Mario's more familiar to people now than Mickey at this point.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with that.
100%.
Certainly in my kids.
Yeah, and there's a feeling of like interactivity and stuff. Like Mario is approachable. You know, Mickey is this godlike figure in some ways almost too. You know that you certainly can't hang out with Mickey, but you can hang out with Mario all day. But yeah, there is some great icons that have been created. Like you said, the visuals of Mario. Some of the things even we worked on this year, I've realized that like Enter the Gungeon. Enter the Gungeon has this real simple face, that it's kind of like that smiley face, like from Forrest
The
Gump.
Bulletkin.
Remember that Forrest Gump thing where the truck went by and splashed all the dirty water on him, he wiped his face, it was smiling, said, "Have a nice day,"
Yeah.
And that's where this shirt came from. It's kind of like one of those things. There's certain iconic things that you can see and they don't need any words to them, and so Mario's one of them for sure. But I think there's more video game icons that could be identified with no words necessary, only the art or the imagery, and then maybe even with movies or anything else, but anyway, so I just love the iconic art of the gaming as well. And
There's a lot of reasons to love it. I mean, you pick up a box. Gosh, you remember what it was like to walk into a store. I don't know, Fedco. I don't know if you guys ever had a Fedco, but
we weren't in jail.
Or how about Sears? You'd walk
Sure.
into Sears, and they would have a game section with the NES boxes on there. And I'm talking back when it was just black boxes. So you walk in and you see the black box, and you're like, I want the one with that on it, whatever that was. I want that one.
Because that was the only marketing. There weren't any
Yeah.
I mean, if there were video game magazines, maybe, but not in mass distribution when I was a kid.
Heck no,
Not
you
yet.
had to look at the box and figure out if this was a game you wanted to play. And maybe you were lucky enough that a friend had played it and said, this is awesome or this sucks, don't buy that. But you had to take the box, look at the back. Maybe they had some cool words. Maybe they had some screenshots or other art. And you had to decide right then and there. Because this was, if you go early enough, this was before you could even rent them at your Blockbuster or your Family Video or whatever. You had to figure out, is this something I can play? And if you were really lucky, they had a kiosk with a Nintendo and that game was in it and you could play it for like 2 minutes.
Well, let's
and
see, Eric.
figure that out.
If you had to guess from looking at the things that I have designed this last year, what box art do you think that we seem to like the most?
I don't know. They do seem to be a little popular, though. I don't know.
Would
There
it be-
might be a shared love for this.
Well, but I mean, the style of the art came totally.
Yeah, from the black box.
Yeah, totally. And the angle and the breaking the fourth wall, if you will, of letting
It's an
the art
icon.
break
You talk
out.
about icons, that's an icon.
Yeah. And so, it's just a thing that feels right. You see it and you're like, oh, I know what that is. But the artwork would tell you, does it work for your game system? Because remember,
That's right.
back in the day, it wasn't always that clear does this work for my game system or not? Does it? And especially if your mom or your aunt or your uncle were out there trying to buy you a gift for Christmas,
Someone who really didn't know.
they would
Yeah.
no way would they know. I mean,
Well, because you could pick up a box and maybe that game was for your Commodore 64, first computer I ever had, by the way, Commodore 64. I mean, they looked a lot alike.
Yeah.
Some of the games were on both. Frogger, you want to pick up Frogger,
Yeah.
You're going based on the art on the cover, and that was always so much more intricate for those older games than the game actually looked. So it was like meant to set up kind of your mind's eye to help you imagine what you're kind of going through as you're playing the game. But you could go based on like there's I just remember some of these games having just these amazing like paintings as far as artwork goes on the cover.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
hard to replicate that feeling nowadays. It's
And that was all definitely original artwork, because the small art that was used inside the game was no way high res enough to print. So
No.
all of the box art had to be original concept art, and sometimes not by the actual designer themselves. It would definitely be third party. So some of it wasn't necessarily representative of what the game was. It was what the guy marketing the game thought the game was.
Well, it's like, describe the game to me. What are you doing? And then he draws something, he paints something or whatever, and that's your art.
But that's all a part of that wonderful experience, because when you had something that looked cool and then you take it home, you know, depending upon who you are, you either carefully open that box or you just rip that thing to shreds and release the game from the box, right? How many times did we do that and now regret it? But you know, you open
all
that
of
up
them,
and you right? You open that up, you take that cartridge out and you look at the cartridge art, which usually matched the box art, and then you stick this thing in, and then your brain is already in that mode. Your mind's eye is already playing the game with the graphics that it has, but you're thinking like the box art, and you're experiencing it in your brain the way that it was painted on the box when you were a kid, you know, when you were young. That's how it felt, and it was such an amazing experience. Even if the game was, quote, NES hard, like something like Ghosts and Goblins, where, you know, if you were lucky, you could spend 2 hours to get past the first level the first time you played it. You know, that type of thing, that experience burned into you, and you just loved it.
Wow, I think we're doing some therapy here now. We're really getting deep. We're getting into it. Well, I think these are fun topics. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We'd like to talk about our featured game of the week. I have looked at a whole list of games and thought about what's going on, but I think there's one that I know it's a little bit pertinent to what we have going on, but honestly, it's going to be such a great thing that we're going to release here. I want to talk about the Hotline Miami collection, which Smitty might know a little something about.
Hotline Miami. Well, it's got a Metacritic score of 87.
Did you memorize that, or are you staring at
He
that?
checks it every day.
I know, he's just watching.
It's
like the stocks.
I just want to name all the platforms that Hotline Miami has ever been published for. OS X, PS3, PS Vita. I've also heard referred to as Vita. Can you believe that? Linux, PlayStation 4, Android, and Switch, and of course just a good old PC, but the good old Windows. But so this game, that was the original.
It's on everything.
That was the original Hotline Miami, and it was released by Devolver Digital. God dang, how old is it?
A few? Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little more than a few years old at this point.
It was like 2012, right? It was 2012. So the first one was in 2012, and then there's Wrong Number, the sequel, all done by Denaton Games. So we've got to give a big old shout out to Denaton, so Dennis and Jonathan. But so Hotline Miami is a game, ever since we started Special Reserve Games, that was on the list to put out for physical, because it was such a brilliant game digitally and everybody loved it in mass. I mean, it was hugely popular, still is. I didn't really realize the importance of the physical version of it. A couple years ago. But as we've progressed the physical collector community even a little bit, further, way improving it, all the different companies out there, to me, one of them led by Limited Run Games, love those guys big time for making that PS4 collector group. They built that as far as I'm concerned. And so everybody, all those guys were also saying that, when are you going to do Hotline Miami? When are you going to do Hotline Miami? So I knew it was super important. So finally, here we are, putting it out
April 21st
on Nintendo Switch physical for the first time.
With both games on the cartridge.
On one cartridge.
This is not like get one, download the other. And I, as a very discerning and hardcore Switch fan appreciate, because I don't want to have to download the games. I want them all on the cartridge.
Yep.
I'm buying a cartridge for a reason.
With all the any DLC, which is digital, that's part of the name is digital, but any other additional content, not just patches, not day one patch or any kind of critical patches, but actual content, a new level, this and that, and whatever. We try to get all of that on the actual cart and we call that pristine. That's our little.
Now I know that sometimes things happen where somebody found a bug after the fact and now they want to fix that. So sometimes you might have a patch for that might happen on a release or two here and there. But, the important thing to me as a collector is I want to be able to play this to the best of its ability without any severe bugs, with all the content on the cartridge. And I love that we're able to deliver this because I know people are asking and I know people are desiring that. And right now, the closest we can get with Hotline Miami is there was a Japanese collection release on disc, but only had the first game on the disc. You had a code for the other game. Yeah. So it's not really great.
And can I just take a little sideways thing? If anyone ever wants to look backwards into our catalog and can look up Shadow Warrior 2, I did Shadow Warrior 2 PC and Shadow Warrior 2 for PS4. Both of those were the only game I ever did where there are actually both games. Like on the PS4, there are 2 discs. There's Shadow Warrior 1, Shadow Warrior 2. And there are 2 different discs inside of the PS4 game. And then the PC has both plus the soundtrack on CD. So there was just to go back, because sometimes we'll look backwards in our catalog. But so Hotline Miami was one of those. It's been around. It's so loved. It's been multi-platform. It's had 2 versions, whatever. And I think they had a hell of a lot of knockoffs and people mimicking that gameplay style. But what am I going to do? What am I going to do to add to that game? Nothing. All I can do is honor it and preserve it. So we get the key art from Dennis, and from Denaton, and then we lay out, of course, the jacket cover. And then we look backwards at what we want to do with every single game has been make sure it's got a physical instruction booklet of at least 24 pages. And so it's actual.
And we're not printing this on newsprint. Okay.
No, yeah, we actually do really. But so it has to have a nice instruction booklet that is worked on with the developer. It's not like I'm just making this up and like marketing material or something.
No, so they're involved.
Very much. Most of the time they're writing the words for us. They're providing the imagery and I'm just laying it out in the template, that's right. Kind of how we work a lot. And so then here we go. So we also, one thing I love from the past, what we were talking about, the black box, is this what we call our reserve box, or you could call it a collector's edition box, but we like to call it a reserve box. And it's a specific size and it's got some artistic elements to it that are an homage to other boxes and box designs from previous. And but I use all kinds of cutting edge techniques with different processes and laminations, foil stamping, emboss, deboss, and building things with 5 different UV layers. And so I'm creating what I'm
all very technical.
Yeah, we're calling topography. I'm creating if you ever seen like a topographical map that you can feel the elevation changes of the hills and stuff a little bit. That's what I'm creating with different processes that some are colored, some are not. So we're using the cutting edge physical printing technology. So I'm still creating tangible physical goods, but I'm able to preserve the art and then honor it and accentuate it in such a way that it actually creates something new a little bit out of this art. So, we are creating a collectible, but I'm not trying to do it by being cute and throwing in a bunch of trinkets and trash. I'm trying to take the artwork and make it the best it can possibly be in a physical state. That's all I'm doing. And
something that you're going to absolutely be wanting to and be proud of putting up on the shelf and displaying.
Oh yeah, and it's weird. Like I say, hey, feel this box, man. It's crazy. You want to touch it, and then you're like, hey, quit touching my box. Yes, you're touching it too much. It's
Don't
fragile.
get the fingerprints
Yeah,
all over it,
exactly.
man.
It's fragile.
Mess
Fragile.
it up. Yeah.
So there's, but just had the honor of creating so many great elements from games that to honor the games that have become icons in and of their own self, or just a physical representation from the game. So Hotline Miami collection, we're just taking a real straightforward approach with the Switch version, double-sided jacket cover. Every unit is sequentially numbered. And if you really care, all the sequential numbers are printed in foil, only not in ink. So it's kind of hard to knock them off, if you will. But we're doing 8,000 total units. We're going to put 7,500 up for sale on our website, right? Or they've already been on sale. Depends on when this podcast airs. But
wasn't it great how quickly they sold out?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe how fast Hotline Miami
only
sold
took
out.
3
Okay,
seconds.
hold on.
Yeah.
Cut number 2. We're almost sold out of Hotline Miami. Come visit our. And then here's the other one. Hey, we're getting ready to go on sale with Hotline Miami. But it's it's got a couple art cards, a sticker, the instruction booklet, and it comes inside of a really nice reserve. And it's going to be straightforward $35. So,
but I just want to lay in on top of all this. It's not just about the box or the game as a piece of art either. Hotline Miami and Hotline Miami 2 are awesome games. Like they're a blast to play.
They're hard.
They have this.
They're
hard to do. They have this great aesthetic. When you look at this, you get that. I mean, the first one immediately, you got that Miami Vice meets guy that's just gonna tear things up, plus the weird element of all these people in the masks and what the hell is going on. So, I mean, you combine all that stuff together along with the gameplay, which encourages you to just get in there and try it and go nuts. Although at times stealth is your friend. You really just got to figure it out. And there's hidden secrets. You have to, I don't want to give anything away, but there's stuff that you have to find if you really want to go 100% in there. I guess I can say that there's more than one secret, and one of them has to do with some masks. I'll just put it that way.
Look how nice Erik is, trying not to give up secrets from a game that was released 6 years ago.
But see, here's the thing. The beautiful thing about this is that when we go and have the luxury of putting this out, there are definitely going to be some people where this is the first time that they've played this. I recently went back through it again because it had been years since I touched the first one. And so I decided, you know what? As we're getting kind of amped up here, I want to play it again because it's such a good game. So I went through it again, and then I go through and I beat the whole thing, and I'm like, damn it, I want to go complete it. So I had to go through and go find the things that I missed throughout it, and that's always fun when you're trying to do that. But man, it's so much fun. I love twin stick games on the Switch. I think the form factor of the Switch, whether you're using the Joy-Cons or if you're using a Pro Controller or whatever, or if you're doing handheld mode, it lends itself to a lot of different game styles, but twin sticks is one of those things that it really works with. You can play twin stick games like Gungeon.
Or My Friend Pedro. Oh, my Lord.
Friend Pedro is another one.
Ah,
I mean,
that one got me.
That's a little bit different for being a twin stick, too.
I know.
Pedro's an amazing game.
Pedro makes your brain have to work.
And it kind of melts your brain, too. But, Hotline Miami just has this classic feel, and I love it. All the different weapons, and it's so, honestly, when you talk about fun, it's just a fun game.
Yep.
So,
well, I recommend that you go download it because I did rip off a lot of different platforms that Hotline Miami had been made for, of course, 1 and 2. So it's, go download it, man, and download it from anywhere, anything to support the developers. I personally know every single one of Devolver Digital, their publisher. And, I've been friends with some of these guys for long time.
More years than you care to.
Yeah, a lot of years. Yeah, over 20.
You know some things about those people,
I
don't you?
I do know some things about them. But
we might say something about them later.
Absolutely. They're great. Well, it's a great publishing house. It's one of the only, it's in the top 10 publishers in the world. It's the only independently owned publishing house. And they truly do put the developers first. And I can tell you without a doubt, if you spent $1 buying Hotline Miami, the lion's share of that dollar goes to the developer. After whatever Steam gets their cut or whatever, Devolver is not. They're more fair to any publisher, or excuse me, they're more fair to any independent developer than I've ever seen any other publisher. So it's absolutely. So if you don't buy the physical version of Hotline Miami, download it on any platform that you got, and enjoy the game. And just keep supporting independent developers, man.
And then maybe consider, if you do love the game, or if you love the art, or just love the package, consider picking up one of ours.
Or 10.
I leave that for you to drop.
My
like
cart
that.
restriction is 10, guys. You can buy 10. It's okay. I'll whore myself out.
The developer ain't going to be mad at you.
No.
But I think Hotline Miami Collection is a great release to say that this is going to be our feature game of the week for the first week here. That we're doing this. So I'm really happy that we can represent that. I think that we are out of quarters. So I think that's about all we can play today. I am Erik.
And I'm Smitty.
I'm Dan.
And until next time, this is a
Game over!